The glory before the fall. In the timeless halls, before the world was made, there dwelt Ilúvatar, the One, the Father of all. With him were the Ainur, the Holy Ones, spirits vast and powerful, who were the offspring of his thought. Among all these magnificent beings, one stood supreme in power and knowledge, Melkor, which means he who arises in might. To Melkor, Ilúvatar had given the greatest share of his own powers. Melkor had knowledge of all the themes that Ilúvatar taught to the Ainur, of fire and frost, of heights and depths, of every domain of creation. There was no realm in which he did not possess understanding. He was glorious to behold, his spirit shining with a brilliance that outshone his brethren. When he spoke, others listened. His mind was penetrating, able to grasp complexities that lesser Ainur struggled to comprehend. Yet even in those timeless days before Arda existed, something set Melkor apart, not merely his power, but his restless ambition. He sought the imperishable flame, the secret of creation itself, a power by which Ilúvatar could give true being to things. It dwelt with Ilúvatar alone, but Melkor desired it for himself. Why should Ilúvatar alone possess the power of creation? He thought in his pride. Am I not the greatest of the Ainur? Surely I too should have the power to create, to bring forth being from my own thought. He went forth into the void, the vast emptiness surrounding Ilúvatar's dwelling, seeking the flame. He wandered alone in spaces where nothing existed, searching, but he found only emptiness, for the imperishable flame could not be found apart from its source. These lonely journeys changed Melkor. In the void, separated from Ilúvatar's presence, his thoughts grew cold and isolated. He began to see himself not as the greatest servant of the One, but as a power in his own right, worthy to stand as an equal rather than a subject. This was the seed of his ultimate doom, the inability to accept his place in the order of creation. The discord in the music. The time came when Ilúvatar proposed to the Ainur that they should make great music together. He declared themes to them and instructed them to adorn these themes with their own creativity, weaving together a harmony that would glorify him and bring forth a great design. The Ainur began to sing, and their voices rose in the timeless halls in a symphony beyond mortal comprehension. Manwe sang of winds and airs, Ulmo sang of waters, Aule sang of earth and stone, Yavanna sang of growing things. Each contributed according to their nature, and the music was glorious. Melkor's voice was the mightiest of all. In the beginning, his contribution enhanced the music greatly, adding power and depth. But even as he sang, pride whispered to him, "This is not truly mine. I sing themes that Ilúvatar has given. Where is my own creation? Where is the work that belongs to me alone?" Gradually, Melkor began to weave into the music thoughts that were not from Ilúvatar's themes, ideas conceived during his lonely wanderings in the void. At first they seemed like embellishments, but slowly his part diverged from the great theme. A discord arose, genuine conflict between competing visions. Ilúvatar raised his hand, and the first theme ended. He began a second theme, deeper and more sorrowful. Many who had briefly followed Melkor returned to the true music, ashamed. But Melkor would not yield. His pride demanded that he prove his vision equal to or greater than Ilúvatar's. He raised his voice louder, making his discord more pronounced. Ilúvatar began a third theme, and this was the most profound of all. It seemed to take the very discord Melkor had created and weave it into something greater, showing how even rebellion could be turned toward ultimate purposes the rebel could not imagine. This humiliation that his discord was merely another instrument in Ilúvatar's hands drove Melkor to rage. He poured all his power into one final assault, trying to drown out the theme entirely. At the height of this chaos, Ilúvatar arose and spoke a single word, Ea. The music ended abruptly. In the terrible silence that followed, the Ainur saw their creator angry for the first time, and they were afraid. The vision and the descent. Then Ilúvatar said, "Behold your music." And he showed them a vision, the music given form as a world, hanging in the void. They saw lands and seas, mountains and valleys, stars in darkness. They saw places prepared for the children of Ilúvatar, elves and men who would come to dwell in this world. For most Ainur, this vision was pure wonder. But Melkor looked upon it with different eyes. He saw regions that seemed influenced by his themes and thought, "These are mine by right. I created them through my music." More dangerously, he saw the places prepared for the children and thought, "Why should Ilúvatar alone have children to worship him? These should be mine to command." Ilúvatar spoke, "The world that you have seen I shall make. Those who wish may enter it. But know this, the children, elves and men, are my especial creation. They are not yours to command or control. They are free." At these words, Melkor's heart filled with bitter resentment, though he concealed it. When Ilúvatar said, "Ea, let these things be," and made the world actual, Melkor was the first to descend. He came swiftly, driven by desire to claim Arda before any other could contest his right. He found a world unformed, raw potential not yet shaped into final forms, and he thought, "I will make it mine." Where the vision had shown symmetry and balance, Melkor introduced chaos and extremes. He raised mountains violently, created regions of bitter cold and burning heat, delved the fortress of Utumno deep in the northern wastes. When the other Valar descended and saw what Melkor had done, they were dismayed. Manwë spoke to him, "Brother, what have you done? We must work together to prepare Arda for the children. This is not your realm alone." But Melkor's response was cold. "I came first. I have labored here. This world is shaped by my power, and I will not yield it." Thus began the first conflict in Arda, the Valar seeking to fulfill the vision, Melkor seeking to dominate according to his own will. When they tried to create order, he introduced chaos. When they made beautiful things, he marred them. The struggle was bitter and long. The spring of Arda and its destruction. After ages of conflict, the Valar achieved some measure of order. They created two great lamps, Ilúin in the north and Ormel in the south, set upon pillars to light the world. Under this light, the spring of Arda began. Yavanna brought forth the first growing things, waters sparkled, mountains stood revealed. It was a time of beauty and hope. During this time, Melkor appeared to withdraw, retreating to Utumno. The Valar hoped he had abandoned his rebellion, but in truth he was marshalling strength and planning greater destruction. He waited until the spring was at its height, until the Valar were invested in their works and their guard was lowered. Then he struck. With overwhelming force, Melkor assaulted the pillars holding the lamps. They toppled and fell, and their fall was catastrophic. Where they struck the earth, they created enormous craters and upheavals. The symmetry of Arda was broken forever. The spring ended as if winter had come in a single day. Melkor stood amid the ruins and laughed, a terrible sound without joy. He had destroyed something beautiful that could never be restored, not to create something better, but merely to prevent others from enjoying what he could not control. This marked a crucial devolution in Melkor's nature. He no longer even claimed constructive purposes. Destruction had become an end in itself. The Valar, grieving and angry, withdrew to the western continent of Aman. There they built Valinor, the guarded realm, raising the Pelori Mountains as a fence. In Valinor they created the two trees, Telperion and Laurelin, whose mingled light blessed the land. But Middle-earth they left largely to Melkor, who declared himself king of the world. The corruption of the children. In the depths of time, the firstborn, the elves, awakened by the waters of Cuiviénen in Middle-earth. They opened their eyes beneath the stars Varda had kindled, and their first experience was of wonder and beauty. But Melkor learned of their awakening immediately. His response was complex. Desire, envy, possessiveness, rage, all mingled together. They are in Middle-earth, which I claim, he thought. They should be mine. He sent servants to watch the elves, to learn their ways and find weaknesses, but his patience failed quickly. Soon darker hunters appeared around Cuiviénen, shapes in the night, terrors in the darkness. Elves began to disappear. These captives were taken to Utumno, and there Melkor worked his will upon them through long torment and dark sorcery. He twisted them into hideous mockeries of their former selves. Thus were the orcs created, not made new by Melkor, for he could not truly create, but corrupted from living children of Ilúvatar. This was Melkor's greatest crime, the corruption of beings Ilúvatar himself had made, taking creatures meant for joy and twisting them into instruments of hate and bondage. When Orome the hunter discovered the elves and brought word to Valinor, the Valar knew they could no longer remain apart.
a great host came forth from Aman in war against Melkor. The battle shook the foundations of Middle-earth. Mountains were leveled, valleys flooded, the land itself changed by forces beyond comprehension. Melkor met them with all his forces, Balrogs, orcs, creatures of shadow and flame. But when Tulkas the Strong joined the battle, Melkor knew fear. Tulkas wrestled him down, and Aule bound him in the chain on Ainur. Utumno was destroyed, its horrors laid bare. Melkor was brought captive to Valinor and imprisoned in the halls of Mondos for 3 ages, a sentence meant to give time for reflection and possible repentance. The false repentance and ultimate betrayal. In the darkness of Mondos, Melkor had time to reflect on what he had become. For moments something resembling remorse stirred in him, but his pride would not allow genuine repentance. Instead, he rationalized his actions, convinced himself he was the victim of jealous conspirators. Yet he was cunning enough to hide this. When his sentence ended and he was brought before the Valar, he came in humble guise, speaking words of contrition. "I have erred grievously. I seek only the chance to make amends, to serve rather than dominate." The Valar debated. Tulkas and Ulmo counseled continued imprisonment, not trusting his reformation. But Manwë, who judged others by his own nature and could not conceive of such profound deception, advocated for mercy. Must not even the fallen be given the opportunity to arise? He asked. And so Melkor was released, though confined to Valinor under watch. For a time he played his part well, appearing humble and helpful, but his true work was subtle corruption. He focused especially on the Noldor, those elves most skilled and ambitious. To Fëanor, maker of the Silmarils, jewels holding the light of the trees, he whispered suspicions. "Your brothers envy you. The Valar fear your power. They seek to constrain you." To others he spoke of empty lands in Middle-earth. "Why remain here, bound by Valar rules? You could have kingdoms of your own." Most insidiously, he introduced distrust between elves and Valar. "They keep you in ignorance, withhold knowledge, control you under guise of protection." The poison worked. Arguments erupted among the Noldor. Fëanor drew a sword against his brother, unprecedented violence in the Blessed Realm. The Valar finally recognized Melkor's deception and sought to arrest him, but he had planned his escape. He fled south and made a pact with Ungoliant, a terrible spider creature who fed on light. Together they assaulted Valinor. Melkor struck the 2 trees with his spear, mortally wounding them. Ungoliant drank their light until they withered and died. Darkness fell on Valinor for the first time. Before fleeing, Melkor broke into Fëanor's house and stole the Silmarils, the jewels he had long coveted, for they represented everything he could never achieve: pure creation, beauty untainted, light that could not be dimmed. After this darkening, the elves no longer called him Melkor. They named him Morgoth Bauglir, the dark enemy, the black foe of the world. And by that name he would be known until his end.
The Kingdom of Darkness. Morgoth fled to Middle-earth with Ungoliant, but when they reached the northern wastes, she turned on him, demanding the Silmarils. "No," he cried in terror and rage. "These are mine." She attacked, wrapping him in webs of darkness. Only the arrival of his Balrogs from Angband saved him. Morgoth returned to Angband and established his throne there. He set the Silmarils in his iron crown, though they burned him with holy fire, for Varda had hallowed them, and they rejected his touch. He declared himself king of the world, though he was now truly a prisoner of his own evil. The theft of the Silmarils drove Fëanor to terrible rage. He swore an oath binding himself and his sons to pursue anyone who held the jewels until they were recovered or the world ended. Against the Valar's council, he led a great host of Noldor out of Aman, committing kinslaying to steal ships. When the Noldor arrived in Middle-earth, war began that would span 6 centuries. The exiled elves established kingdoms and fought battle after battle against Morgoth. He responded with dragons, orcs in vast numbers, and webs of deceit designed to ensure their destruction. Through Glaurung the dragon, he brought about the fall of Nargothrond. Through manipulation and lies, he contributed to the tragedy of Turin Turambar. Through the oath of Fëanor itself, which he did not create but ensured would be fulfilled in the most destructive ways, he turned the Noldor against each other. Yet despite all his power, the free peoples endured. This infuriated Morgoth more than any direct defeat. He had cast down the trees, stolen the Silmarils, bred dragons beyond measure. Yet still they resisted, still they sang songs of hope, still they looked to Varda's stars and cried out Elbereth in their darkest hours. The very fact of their endurance proved the hollowness of his victory. For all his might, he could not break the will of those who chose to oppose him. The final defeat came when Eärendil the Mariner, of both elvish and human lineage, sailed across the sundering seas, bearing a Silmaril upon his brow. He reached Valinor and pleaded for aid for the embattled peoples of Middle-earth. Manwë granted his plea. The host of Valinor was gathered, such a force as had not been seen since the first wars. The Valar themselves came in power, determined to cast down Morgoth forever. The War of Wrath lasted 40 years and was the most terrible conflict ever seen in Arda. Morgoth released all his forces, dragons beyond count, orcs in vast hordes, Balrogs of terrible power. But he could not prevail. One by one his fortresses fell. His armies were destroyed. Even Ancalagon the Black, greatest of dragons, was cast down by Eärendil, sailing in the sky. At last Angband was broken open. Morgoth cowered in the deepest chamber, the Silmaril still burning in his crown. There he was found. The being dragged forth bore little resemblance to the glorious Ainur, who had once been mightiest in the timeless halls. He was diminished, his power poured out into servants and works, twisted by malice, consumed by hate, ultimately empty of purpose or meaning.
The Silmarils were taken from his crown, and they burned him at their touch. His iron crown was beaten into a collar for his neck. He was bound again in Ainur, and this time the judgment was final. Manwë pronounced sentence. You were given the greatest gifts of all the Ainur, but you turned them all to evil. You sought the imperishable flame not to serve Ilúvatar, but to rival him. You destroyed beauty merely because others enjoyed it. You corrupted the children of Ilúvatar, which is the gravest of sins. Therefore you are cast out from Arda, thrust through the door of night into the timeless void. There you shall remain until the end of days. Through the door of night, Morgoth was thrust into the absolute void beyond creation. The door was shut behind him, and Eärendil was set as watchman, sailing in the heavens with the Silmaril to ensure the enemy never returned. The legacy of evil. In the void, Morgoth exists still, if existence is the right word. He is cut off from Arda, unable to touch or influence it. He is alone, truly alone, in a way he was never even in his deepest dungeons. There is no one to command, nothing to corrupt, nothing to destroy or possess. Some say he gnaws at the walls of the universe, seeking a way back, and that at the end of days he will break through for one final battle. Whether this is true or merely metaphor, none can say. But this much is certain. Morgoth's story is a warning about the seductive nature of pride, the danger of unchecked power, the way small compromises with evil can lead to absolute corruption. The mightiest of the Ainur, given every gift and opportunity, chose to turn against his creator and became the enemy of all that is good. Yet his story is also one of hope, for if even Morgoth's vast malice could not ultimately destroy the world or defeat the purposes of good, then no evil can. The free peoples continued to resist, the stars continued to shine, and the music continued despite all his efforts to drown it out. Melkor fell from the greatest height to the lowest depth. In that fall, he proved that evil, no matter how mighty it appears, is ultimately hollow and self-defeating. It cannot create, only corrupt. It cannot build, only destroy. It cannot inspire genuine loyalty, only fear. And in the end, it consumes even those who wield it. The mightiest of the Ainur fell, and in his fall revealed both the terrible danger of pride and the ultimate impotence of evil. His story echoes through all the ages of Arda, a warning that even the greatest gifts can be turned to ruin through wrong choices, but also that no evil, no matter how mighty, can finally triumph over good. And so the song continues, in R'hllabhor and beyond, more beautiful for having overcome his discord. The world he sought to rule endures, scarred but not broken. And the children of Ilúvatar continue to create beauty, to love, to hope, and to sing their own songs in defiance of his shadow. Thus ends the tale of Melkor's fall, from the mightiest of the Ainur to Morgoth, the dark enemy.